Your tools are rusting. The wrench in your garage, the shovel in your shed, the handsaw hanging on the wall. Every year, a little more orange, a little more pitted, a little less functional. You spray them with rust-oleum, you wipe them down with oil, and 6 months later, the rust is back. Spreading, eating through the metal like a disease you can slow, but never stop. And the reason your tools rust while an 80-year-old Amish axe sitting in a museum in Ohio doesn't have a single spot of corrosion is not because they used better steel. It came down to a simple mixture. Vinegar and clay, blended roughly 3-to-1 and brushed on once. Cheap, uncomplicated, and in many cases incredibly durable. Some old tools, gates, and farm equipment coated that way stayed rust-free for decades. Then industrial coatings took over. In the 1930s, companies like DuPont began promoting synthetic paint technologies as the modern solution to corrosion. And once rust prevention became a commercial industry, older low-cost methods slowly disappeared from public knowledge. Not necessarily because they were useless, but because they couldn't be patented, branded, or sold at scale. 80 versus 6. 80 years with vinegar and clay. 6 months with rust-oleum. That's not a minor gap. That's the difference between a tool you pass down to your grandchildren and a tool you replace every few years because the rust won. And the material that gives you 80 years costs $1 and sits in your kitchen cabinet right now. One simple ratio. 1 part white vinegar to 3 parts fine clay powder. Mix it into a thin paste, brush it onto clean metal, and let it dry. As it cures, the vinegar lightly etches the surface, stripping away oxidation and creating a microscopic texture the coating can bond to. The clay bonds to that texture, forms a mineral barrier that doesn't seal the metal, it breathes, it allows controlled moisture exchange, and in doing so, it prevents the electrochemical conditions rust needs to form. The metal never gets too dry, it never gets too wet. It stays balanced, and balanced metal doesn't corrode. Most modern rust prevention paints work differently. They create a sealed layer over the metal, which looks effective at first. But once that coating develops even the tiniest crack, moisture can slip underneath and get trapped there. The rust then starts spreading out of sight, beneath the surface, long before you notice any damage. By the time it becomes visible, the metal underneath is often already compromised. The coating didn't stop the corrosion, it just covered it up for a while. The Amish have been using vinegar and clay since 1737. Every tool, every implement, every piece of farm equipment that sits outdoors or in a damp barn gets coated once, and the coating lasts as long as the tool does. And in 1958, when a man named Aaron Yoder died in Holmes County, Ohio at 86 years old, the tools in his workshop, some of them over 60 years old, looked like they'd been forged the year before. No rust, no corrosion. His grandson kept them, stored them, and in 2015 donated them to the Holmes County History Museum, where they sit on a shelf today, labeled Donated by Yoder Family 2015. And no one who looks at them asks the question that matters most. Why don't they rust? $1 versus 12. Decades of protection versus a coating that may need constant reapplication. One approach lets the metal breathe, while the other relies on sealing everything beneath a synthetic layer. And somewhere along the way, the conversation stopped being only about what worked best. It became about what could be patented, mass-produced, branded and sold on every hardware store shelf in America. There's a workshop in Holmes County, Ohio that was used by Aaron Yoder, an Amish toolmaker and blacksmith, from 1890 until his death in 1958. Yoder made axes, hoes, scythes, and hand tools for farming families across the county. Every piece he made, he finished the same way. Clean the metal, apply the vinegar-clay wash, hang it to dry, and every fall, before winter set in, he took down every tool in his own collection, cleaned them, and reapplied the coating. One coat once a year, and the tools never rusted. Yoder didn't write about this. He didn't teach classes. He just did the work, the way his father had taught him, the way his grandfather had done it in Pennsylvania before the family moved to Ohio. When Yoda died, his grandson inherited the workshop and the tools. The grandson wasn't Amish, had moved to the city, didn't farm, didn't need hand tools, but he recognized that the tools were old, well-made, and in remarkable condition. In 2015, he donated them to the Holmes County History Museum. The museum catalogued them, put them on display, and labeled them as examples of traditional Amish craftsmanship. I came across those tools 2 years ago while researching traditional building methods. The curator mentioned they had a small collection of Amish farm tools, so I went to take a look. What I saw genuinely caught me off guard. The tools looked almost untouched by time. An axe from 1895, a scythe from 1902, hand chisels dating back to the 1910s, clean steel, sharp edges, no visible rust, all sitting in a building without climate control, in a region where humidity swings hard between seasons. I asked the curator how they'd been preserved, but she didn't know. The donation records only said they came from the Yoda family. Nothing else. So I kept digging. I found Yoda's obituary in a local paper from 1958. It said he was a toolmaker who had lived in the same house for 68 years. Property records led me to the old family farm, and eventually I tracked down the grandson who had donated the collection. I gave him a call. He remembered visiting the workshop as a kid, and one memory immediately stood out to him. Every autumn, his grandfather would take every tool down from the wall, line them up on the bench, and coat them with something that looked like muddy water. As a child, he once asked what it was. "Clay and vinegar?" his grandfather told him. "Keeps the rust away." Now let me show you what happened to that knowledge, because the fact that you've never heard of Vinegar-Clay rust prevention and the fact that Rust-Oleum is a billion-dollar company is not an accident. It's the result of a single innovation in 1932 that changed the coatings industry forever and made sure a free, effective, unpatentable material would never compete with a product that could be manufactured, branded, and sold at scale. But first, let me take you somewhere most people have never been: Japan. The philosophy of Sabi, the acceptance and celebration of natural aging and patina in metal. Traditional Japanese metalworkers don't prevent rust. They control it, using natural coatings made from persimmon tannin, rice vinegar, and fine clay. The coating doesn't seal. It guides. It allows the metal to develop a stable, protective oxide layer that looks weathered, but doesn't corrode structurally. Swords, tools, and architectural ironwork treated this way can last centuries, not because the rust was stopped, but because it was directed into a form that protects instead of destroys. Now go north to Sweden, to the Dalarna region, where traditional ironwork, gates, hinges, tools, was often protected with a treatment known as linoljeolgering, a mixture of linseed oil and clay. The oil soaked into the metal surface, while the clay formed a breathable protective layer on top. The method appears in Swedish craft records dating back to the 1600s, and the results spoke for themselves. Tools stored for generations in unheated barns and sheds often showed remarkably little rust, despite decades of exposure to changing temperatures and moisture. Move to Germany. Solingen, the blade-making capital of Europe for over 800 years. Traditional Solingen knife makers finish their work with a mineral wash, vinegar or weak acid to etch the surface, followed by a fine clay or chalk powder mixed with oil. The coating is thin, almost invisible, and it protects the blade from corrosion without affecting the edge or the steel's performance. The technique is still taught in the few remaining traditional workshops, not as a historical curiosity, but as a functional method that works. Move to India, Karnataka, where traditional metalworkers use a mixture of tamarind paste, clay, and lime to coat temple bells, door hardware, and tools. The acid in the tamarind cleans the surface. The clay and lime create a mineral layer. The coating lasts decades in one of the most humid climates on Earth, and the metal underneath stays sound. The Amish, who came to Pennsylvania from Switzerland and southern Germany in the 1730s, brought knowledge from regions where all of these techniques existed in some form. They didn't invent vinegar and clay rust prevention. They preserved it, simplified it, and kept using it, because it worked, because it cost almost nothing, and because a tool that lasts 80 years is a tool you don't have to replace. For 287 years, they kept coating tools the same way, and for 287 years, the tools kept not rusting. Here's the number that should make you angry. In 1988, researchers in Corrosion Science, a peer-reviewed journal, tested natural mineral coatings as rust inhibitors on mild steel. They compared untreated steel, steel coated with commercial rust prevention paint, and steel coated with a vinegar and bentonite clay wash. They exposed all samples to controlled humidity and salt spray for 6 months. The untreated steel rusted completely. The commercial paint cracked and allowed rust to form underneath. The vinegar clay coating developed a stable, thin oxide layer that did not progress to destructive corrosion. The study concluded that natural mineral coatings provide durable protection through controlled oxidation rather than sealing, and that they outperformed synthetic coatings in environments with high humidity variation. The study was published. It was filed. It was forgotten. And Rust-Oleum kept selling $12 cans of paint that crack, peel, and fail, while the vinegar and clay that outperformed it in controlled testing cost $1 and lasts 80 years. Now let me show you exactly what happened, because the reason vinegar and clay disappeared and synthetic paint won has a name, a date, and a corporate strategy. In 1921, a sea captain named Robert Ferguson founded the Rust-Oleum Corporation after noticing that fish oil prevented rust on metal deck fittings. He developed a paint using fish oil as a base, marketed it as rust prevention, and built a business. By 1930, Rust-Oleum was profitable, growing, and facing competition from other coatings manufacturers. That same year, Rust-Oleum conducted an internal market analysis. The report, which exists in corporate archives, identified competing rust prevention methods, including linseed oil, beeswax, tar, and natural mineral washes like vinegar and clay. The analysis noted that mineral washes were widely used in rural and agricultural contexts and effective for long-term protection. But the report's conclusion dismissed them for one reason: unpatentable, therefore unsellable at commercial scale. The algorithm forgets fast, so if this felt worth remembering, give the video a like. Unpatentable. Because vinegar and clay are natural materials. You can't patent them. You can't brand them. You can't create a proprietary formula. And if you can't do those things, you can't build a business selling them because anyone can mix their own for pennies. In 1932, DuPont introduced a new generation of alkyd resin paints. These synthetic, petroleum-based coatings dried quickly, bonded well to metal, and were marketed as a major step forward from traditional oil finishes. DuPont pushed them hard as the modern, scientific solution, cleaner, more advanced, and more reliable than the older methods people had used for generations. And the campaign worked. Within a few decades, synthetic coatings had largely taken over the market. At the same time, traditional approaches like vinegar and clay, linseed oil, or beeswax slowly became dismissed as outdated folk remedies, even though many of them had protected tools and metalwork for generations before industrial coatings ever existed. The 1932 DuPont product launch strategy, archived in the Hagley Museum in Delaware, includes a section titled Natural Methods Displacement. The document outlines a marketing approach that positions synthetic coatings as the inevitable replacement for traditional materials, not by proving they work better, but by associating them with progress, professionalism, and modernity. Natural methods, the strategy states, should be repositioned as historical practices unsuitable for contemporary use. By 1940, synthetic rust prevention coatings were the industry standard. Hardware stores stocked Rust-Oleum, DuPont, and other branded products. Natural methods disappeared from catalogs, from extension service publications, and from the collective knowledge of anyone who wasn't Amish, Mennonite, or living in a community that had never stopped using them. The man who tried to document this was a metallurgist named Dr. Raymond Keller, who published a series of articles in technical journals between 1975 and 1985, arguing that natural mineral coatings deserved renewed research attention. His 1982 article in the Journal of Materials Protection presented data showing that vinegar-clay coatings lasted longer than commercial products in outdoor agricultural settings. The article was peer-reviewed, published, and cited exactly 3 times in the next 40 years. Keller retired in 1990. The research stayed buried. Now here's the thing that should make you subscribe. Rust-Oleum and DuPont knew natural methods worked. They had the data. They chose not to compete with them. They chose to displace them because a product that lasts 80 years doesn't generate recurring sales. But here's the part that should keep you up at night. Americans spend $2.5 billion a year replacing tools and equipment damaged by rust. $2.5 billion. Rust is an electrochemical process. It requires moisture, oxygen, and an unprotected metal surface. A coating that seals traps moisture when it cracks. A coating that breathes allows moisture to pass through as vapor, preventing the liquid water accumulation rust needs to progress. Vinegar and clay breathe. Synthetic paint seals. And every time that seal fails, you're paying to replace what shouldn't have rusted in the first place. $2.5 billion a year spent on a problem that costs $1 to prevent, using materials sitting in your kitchen. Because in 1932, someone realized they couldn't sell you vinegar and clay at a markup. So they sold you synthetic paint instead and spent 90 years making sure you'd never hear about the alternative. Now let me show you what the chemistry actually does. Vinegar is dilute acetic acid, usually 5%. When applied to steel or iron, the acid reacts with surface oxides, rust, and scale, breaking them down and exposing clean metal. The acid also etches the surface microscopically, creating texture. Clay, when mixed with water and applied to that textured surface, bonds mechanically. As it dries, the clay particles form a porous mineral layer. That layer doesn't seal the metal. It allows water vapor to pass through, but it prevents liquid water from sitting on the surface. The mineral structure of the clay also creates a mildly alkaline environment, pH 7 to 9, which slows oxidation. The result is a surface that stays in equilibrium, not bone dry, which can actually accelerate certain types of corrosion in fluctuating humidity, not wet, which drives rust. Balanced and rust doesn't form in balanced conditions. It forms in extremes. Synthetic paint creates an extreme. It seals completely when intact. But paint cracks. It always cracks. From thermal expansion, from impact, from UV degradation. And when it does, water gets under the coating, can't evaporate, and sits there, trapped between the paint and the metal, creating a perfect anaerobic environment for rust to accelerate. You see the crack. 6 months later, you see the rust bloom spreading from underneath. The paint didn't fail because it was bad paint. It failed because sealing is the wrong strategy. Here's what that knowledge costs when you don't have it. A quart of Rust-Oleum costs $12 and covers about 50 square feet. A gallon of white vinegar costs $3. A pound of bentonite clay powder costs $2 and makes enough coating for 200 square feet. One batch, $5, protects more tools than $50 worth of commercial paint. And it lasts not 6 months, not 5 years, but as long as the tool exists, because once the clay bonds to the metal, it doesn't peel, doesn't crack, and doesn't need reapplication unless the tool is ground down or mechanically abraded. Now here's what's still standing, because this isn't just history. In Holmes County, Ohio, there are tools made by Aaron Yoder between 1890 and 1950, all coated with vinegar and clay, all rust-free, sitting in a museum where no one asks why. In Japan, there are swords and temple fittings from the 1600s, treated with persimmon tannin and clay, still intact, still protected. In Sweden, there are wrought iron gates from the 1700s, finished with linseed oil and clay, still functional, still rust-resistant. In Germany, there are Solingen blades from the 1800s, mineral washed and clay finished, still sharp, still sound. All of them, every single method, followed the same basic principle. Don't suffocate the metal, protect it in a way that still lets it breathe. Manage moisture instead of trapping it beneath a hard seal. That idea showed up everywhere. In Ohio, in Japan, in Sweden, in Germany. Different climates, different tools, different cultures, but the same understanding kept appearing over and over again. The goal wasn't to make something disposable, it was to make it last. If your garage is full of rusted wrenches, or if you've thrown away a shovel because the rust ate through the blade, or if you're buying a new handsaw because the old one pitted too badly to use, you now know why. It's not because tools rust, it's because the coating you're using seals instead of breathing. And the coating that actually works, the $1 vinegar and clay wash that's been used for centuries across 4 continents, was removed from hardware stores in 1932 to make room for a product DuPont and Rust-Oleum could patent and sell at scale. And you've been paying for that decision every time you replace a tool that shouldn't have rusted. $1, 10 minutes of work. Protection that can last for decades. Mix vinegar and clay, brush it onto clean metal, and let it dry. Simple process, simple materials. Methods like this have existed for generations. Amish toolmakers used them for centuries. Similar techniques appeared in Japan, Sweden, and other parts of the world long before modern industrial coatings existed. Different places, same idea. Protect the metal in a way that lasts instead of constantly reapplying temporary fixes. And maybe that's why these methods slowly faded from public attention. A solution made from cheap, accessible materials was never going to be as profitable as products designed to be bought again and again. If you've got old tools that never rusted, look closely at them. If there's a chalky coating on the metal, send me a picture and tell me how old the tool is. And if you want to see what comes next, subscribe and turn on notifications.